Desiree, in the high-profile matters that you represent clients in, what can a lawyer bring to the client's strategic and tactical communications decisions amid a media crisis?
That's such a great question because oftentimes I think our instinct or our client's instinct is to lead with dialogue, to lead with a lot of narrative, right? And to not necessarily consider at the outset what the legal implications are around that narrative and around that dialogue. And so what I like to do with my clients is get in early and frankly get in on the front end before there's any crisis so that we can make a communications plan. But even if we haven't, if we can take a step back and take a breath and think about, one, what are the facts? Two, what is the law? What are the relevant legal implications? And there almost always is some pertinent and pressing legal implication. And then what is the feeling that we want to convey that takes into account both of those things, the facts and the law? And so what the lawyer brings is the guardrails around discussing facts in a public fashion, right? And I've heard you talk about this before. The worst thing that can happen is that you come out with something that is inaccurate or false, even if you're not aware at the time that it's false. Sometimes coming out too early with a narrative can land you in a place where now you have to reconcile what you said. Not only do you have the underlying crisis, but you have the crisis of the discrepancy in how you've initially talked about the matter in a public facing way and what you're saying as you are reporting to regulators or putting something in a brief or a complaint or an answer. So a lawyer, as I said, brings the guardrails and also brings the long-term vision because that is not always apparent at the outset. It might seem in the moment, in the heat of a crisis, that speaking about it and rectifying it or addressing the concerns is the best thing that you can do. And sometimes it is. But if you're only looking at the short-term sort of immediate gratification of providing a response, you might not be thinking about the long-term implications. Is this a public company? Do we need to worry about derivative suits from shareholders? Is this something that we're going to need to parse out and report to state regulatory agencies, to federal agencies? And how will that initial narrative impact what we say? And so again, in terms of the lawyer, I think of myself as kind of the safety net and the guardian angel. I'm sort of coming at it from all angles, right? To make sure you're protected in the moment, that you've thought about the legal implications, and you're protected in the long term because you have not said or done anything in the heat of the crisis that will create a disconnect or create, as I said, an additional crisis on the back end as you're reconciling your statement and trying to remedy or rectify the underlying crisis. And so, bringing in legal early is always going to serve you well. Worst case, you don't need counsel. It turns out to be a non-legal event, and maybe it is just a PR event, and that's fine. You still will have been cautious. You still will have been thoughtful and mindful in your response, and in a best case scenario, you are protected from the legal hurdles that the lawyers know may be coming down the line in relation to whatever the crisis may be.